I was 18, living in college dorms several hours from home and working as a waitress at an upscale bar and restaurant. I'm short, barely 5 foot, so I'm used to people being creepy and trying to intimidate me now. But as an 18-year-old whose father had tried to protect her from the world and had been raised in a tiny, friendly town, it never occurred to me to be scared of the people who lurk in the dark. We had plenty of regulars, several of whom I became close with during my years working there, and a few frequent diners learned my name and general facts about me, since I'm generally pretty open about who I am. One such man was tall, lanky, and several decades older, appearing to be in his mid-50s. Joe. Joe was kind, a good man with a generous nature who owned a local shoe shop. The second time I was his waitress, he gifted me a pair of slightly worn work shoes, insisted that I accept them. Because of his kindness and the way he carried himself, people of all types flocked to him, and one of them became the first man outside of my family that I feared. Joe came in with his younger brother, about the same height, slightly bulkier build, and not unattractive as I recall, but his eyes unsettled me. In high school, I fancied myself a bit of a writer, but nothing in my vocabulary then or now could help me describe how unsettling his gaze was. It seemed dead, lifeless, but I assumed I was simply nervous. Joe was a good man. His brother was probably just less carefree, more intense. The two dined together a few times in the coming weeks, but while Joe would normally request me as a server, he asked our host to assign one of the other servers to his table after the first time. Then, one night, Joe's brother came in alone and requested me by name, and I was happy to oblige. For the first time, he seemed relaxed, energetic, charismatic. He was interesting, with a quick wit and a story for every topic I could throw at him. By the end of my shift, I assumed he had just had a hard time relaxing with his brother, and that may have been true, but through the laughter and charisma, his eyes never once seemed kind. They remained, through it all, lifeless. Eventually, it was time for me to leave, but he was still there, still expecting service. My manager offered to take over the table. He'd make sure I got the tip, but it was common knowledge I had an early morning class and likely had to do my homework. I jumped at the chance, but went off to finish some closing duties and asked the man, my last table, if he needed anything else. He seemed off. As soon as I said I was heading home, he seemed to harden. His voice was clipped and reminded me of my controlling ex-stepdad, which immediately put me on edge. I'd heard the same time often enough as a little girl, right before being hit. I left immediately. I called my best friend and offered to buy him dinner if he'd meet me at the diner between the dorms and my work. I don't know why I did. I just felt that I needed someone to meet me sooner rather than later. Joe's brother hadn't in any way seemed dangerous outside of the terseness in his voice before I left, but I knew that for most of my walk, which would have been poorly lit, I would be safer with a companion. We met at the diner, we ate and laughed and headed back to the dorms. A good 25-minute walk, but only 15 or so in, the hairs on the back of my neck seemed to burn. Something was terrifying me, and I didn't know why. I told my friend, who brushed it off until he looked behind me and yelled. I turned and saw him. Joe's brother, only a few yards behind us, holding a metal bar. I don't know what they're called, but you see them at construction sites, usually for reinforcement when pouring concrete, and he was holding it, hard enough that his knuckles were white. It terrified me to my core, and I screamed. My friend grabbed my arm and we ran, and even though my heart was in my throat, I couldn't hear anything past the blood roaring in my ears. I swear I could hear his footsteps behind us. We ran to the dorms, and I told security, who had us wait in the office while he looked at cameras in the lot and called the police. Cops showed, but did nothing since all he did was scare us. After they left, the security man asked a few more questions and made a comment about a man standing at the entrance door for a bit before walking away. It was assumed he was homeless, but my blood ran cold. I called in for a few days, and when I went back to work, Joe was in. I told him what had happened, and he nodded. Didn't even seem to question the validity of what I had said. His brother, it turned out, had done some time for stalking and sometimes attacking young women, and had even been sent to trial for assaulting one and hospitalizing her. Somehow, he managed to avoid jail time for the assault, but Joe said it was only a matter of time before he killed someone. I didn't see Joe often after that, and I never saw his brother after that. The owner of the restaurant was angry for a long time, accused me of running off a regular who spent a lot of money when he came in. It took a few more scary encounters to make me a little more cynical, but to Joe's brother, let's not meet.